And I think to make life easy, I always say I'm Lulu because most people can cope with Lulu. So you can call me Lulu and feel free. And the other one you learn along the
Yes.
way.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much.
And
I
Lulama means someone who is very sweet and, you know, understands and sympathizes with people and so on and so on. So Lulama, that is the meaning. So short for Lulu. I know in other countries Lulu means pearl, but I don't know if you have such a name in Uganda. But you can call me Lulu anytime. Feel free.
awesome. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Um, to to really kick this off, we want to get to know your story. First of all, when I looked at your profile, it is such a very rich story of different things that you have done and a lot of achievements that you have garnered over the years, be it in politics, in diplomacy, and you have served in various capacities, some of which I might not go through because it's quite extensive. But can you tell us the story of where all of this began? Like as a little girl, what were your dreams and how did you work your way up to where you are now?
Yes. Let me first say that I grew up under apartheid, and those were difficult times. You know, we had black schools and white schools, black universities and white universities. We had black suburbs and black suburbs called townships, which were no more shanty towns and small houses that were built for African people. And the whites had big houses, big yard, swimming pool, all those things you dream about, can only dream about. They got it, it was taken for granted in the white community, but in the black community, it could only be a dream. So we also had black churches, white churches. That is how apartheid was entrenched and institutionalized. And as you can imagine, the white churches were always explaining biblically what, why we need apartheid, that it is their God-given right to separate black from white, and the others, especially the majority, the African people, being treated as inferiors and not as second-class citizens, not having citizenship in their motherhood, in their motherland. So this is where we came from. And as I grew up as a little girl, you begin to experience the brutality of apartheid. At one stage, you see your father being abused. You see your father being arrested for not carrying a pass or something like that. And you grow up a rebel, I will say, or an activist to fight this discrimination and all these laws that are oppressing us. And as we grew up, there was a form of education. As I've said, you know, we had black schools and black universities, different from white schools, white universities, and the black facilities were always under-resourced. So there was a system of education that was introduced in 1955 by the then Prime Minister of South Africa, apartheid South Africa, Mr. Verwoerd, who said blacks must be the hewers of wood and the fetchers of water. So blacks were just meant to join the labor forces of South Africa, work in the factories, work in the mines, and that's all you were expected to achieve. So this is what actually led in 1976 to the youth of South Africa rising against this Bantu education. Well, some will say they were rising against Afrikaans that was enforced in the schools, but it was the whole system of Bantu education that our young people were rising against. So when I finished my high school, my mother was widowed, so I had to find my way to university. I've always wanted to be a doctor as a young girl. It was my dream, 5 years, 6 years. If you ask me, what are you going to be? I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. So this dream grew as I went through school and so on. I studied maths and science, and then time for university, I applied at a white university because I believe there's no difference between me and a white child. So to get a place at a white university at that time, you had to get permission from the Minister of Education, who was also white, Mr. F.W. de Klerk. He was the then Minister of Education. He later became the Prime Minister of South Africa. In fact, he became the last president of apartheid South Africa, and he had to hand over to President Nelson Mandela. So I wrote to the minister, Mr. F.W. de Klerk, and you had to have a lot of tricks to convince the minister why you must not go to a black university, you must go to the white university. So my tricks were that I wanted to do a BSc degree, and at that time, or medicine, and at that time, we didn't have black universities that had medicine or some of the science courses. So I said I wanted to do biochemistry, genetics. These are some of the courses that I will use when I go into the medical field. So now those tricks worked.
I'm glad to hear that.
The minister gave me the permit I needed to go to Wits. So indeed, I went to Wits. As I said, my mother was widowed. I was able to get a scholarship from the South African Council of Churches. That was an NGO or a council of churches that was headed by the Archbishop, the late Archbishop Tutu. In fact, all these people are now late because he passed on, I think, late last year, or beginning of this year, beginning of this year. And Mr. F.W. de Klerk also passed on late last year. So Archbishop Tutu was able to facilitate a scholarship for me, and I was able to go to Wits University. Of course, at Wits University, there were many other things going on. As I said, you become a rebel in an apartheid state. So I met leaders like Winnie Mandela, leaders like Albertina Sisulu, leaders like young people that were active in the university. And one of the leaders of the youth at that time was Peter Mukaba. He would come, he was not one of the students, but he would come at Wits, and, the mobilization of young people also happened in universities and all over. And half the time we were studying, half the time we were protesting, half the time we did not go to class because we had to protest against one or two issues that were affecting the nation. So this is how I started. And in the end, I then decided I wanted to be a teacher because that was the urgent need at that time. We didn't have maths and science teachers. So I had studied maths and science, and I thought I'll become a teacher. But along the way, I then became active in politics. So this is how my career changed altogether and
Wow.
what I had planned for myself.
Wow.
And
I
then
was expecting some more because, yes.
And then after that, I finished at WITS. I went to to teach in an NGO again, because at that time, the government was very particular who they are going to employ. And I ended up teaching people how to read and write. And then later on, I then joined the ANC, which was the African National Congress. And when all our leaders were free, President Nelson Mandela was released from jail, and the leaders in exile came back home. They negotiated a settlement in South Africa, and there was an agreement for democratic elections that took place in 1994. And then blacks were voting for the first time in my country on the 27th of April, which
Yes.
is our Freedom Day. And now we were able to go to Parliament, and I was able to go to Parliament at that time because things had changed and we had opened the space for South Africans, black or white, to
So
participate, have the vote.
at this time, you were still teaching, right? But you
Yeah,
decided to go and join
at this
politics
time,
actively.
I was working for the ANC full time.
Oh, at that point now.
Yes.
Okay, so what had happened to the teaching at that point?
Well, I was asked to come and work for the ANC, women in particular.
Yes.
So I worked in the rural areas, and we set up some projects for poor communities, especially women and children, which were income generating projects.
Yes.
We were fundraising internationally from Denmark, from Sweden, other sympathetic countries that supported us during the apartheid era. And through that kind of funding, we're able to set up projects, whether it's agriculture projects, whether it's arts and culture projects, catering, that assisted women to have an income for themselves.
Wow. So then at this point you contest and then you get to parliament, right?
Yes, we then went to elections, and of course, I was working for the ANC, so I was part of the election campaign and all that.
Yes.
But we then had we have a proportional representation system, electoral system in South Africa. So as girls and women, we were supported by the party through affirmative action to say, okay, she's a young girl, she doesn't know much, but she will learn. We must give them the opportunity.
Yes.
And of course, some of the men didn't like it, but it was policy. It was policy of the ANC. They had to support. Our leaders supported it. Nelson Mandela supported women. President Oliver Tambo supported women, Thabo Mbeki, and all of them. So that balance had to be there. So I was one of those women that was asked to come to Parliament.
Wow.
But once we're in Parliament, you have to deliver. You cannot just go to Parliament and hope that because you are a woman, you are special. No.
You just sit and that's everything will work
Yes.
itself out.
Yes. So we set up our women's caucuses. We set up women's committees. We made sure that laws are passed for women to address women's challenges, like the Domestic Violence Act, like ensuring that pregnant women and children under 5 have free health care in our country, and a number of laws that were passed by then the new democratic non-racial, non-sexist government of South
Yes.
Africa.
Yes.
So women had to push. So that's why we had our women's caucuses, the women's league, the different women's formations, women's committee in
Yes.
parliament that was going to prioritize women's concerns and laws that were going to empower women and children.
Well, allow me interject there a little bit. What I'm noticing here is at different points in your story, we look at the power of partnerships, right? And being able to liaise with different people for a common goal, right? So first of all, you brought women together. While the policies were enabling, women were able to come together. So in light of that, can you elucidate, can you explain a little more on how these partnerships helped you even just up to that point? Because I see the partnership of your parents, even through difficult times when there was segregation. I do not know how you worked your way and the courage to talk to the prime minister at that time to go to a white university. Were there partnerships? Were people who helped you to get that to happen? And even when you went, still you were looking to partner with different people, and that is why you joined the ANC. So I'm looking at opportunities for partnerships here. How did these partnerships help accelerate you to where you were, even at that point of joining parliament and politics?
Yes, as I said, as a student activist, we shared experiences, we advised one another, and we will ask, how did you get to Wits? It's like, no, you must write and to the minister
Yes.
and tell him you want this course and that course is not available in Forte, that course is not available in Teflop, so it's only available in Wits. So he will be forced to take you.
Yes.
So you're right, you have got some advice. Also, when it was time for parliament, although I didn't, at that time I was not interested, I thought I could continue with my studies. I was still young and so on. And because I was working with the women, I asked them, what do I do now? I've been asked, they said, you follow what the leaders are saying. You can always study later on, even in parliament. And in fact, I did. I was able to study later on in parliament. And so those partnerships were very good, even when we were making the laws. And there was resistance sometimes against some of the laws because maybe some of the members were not interested. What we would do, we would sit as the Women's Caucus of Parliament. We also had a strong women's movement at that time in South Africa. So if Lulu is talking in Parliament and someone dismisses, oh, that one is a big mouth, don't listen to her. But when the women from the villages are also saying the same thing, they are demanding the same thing, the leaders are bound to listen. So those partnerships and networks are very important. Whatever your goal, whatever your campaigns, you have to be united, and at all times you have to touch base with the partners or the sector which is working with you, which is supporting you, and also you have to go back and listen to them. What
Yes.
are their needs? What are their priorities? So that those are also put on the agenda in the plans and in the laws that were passing in parliament. So that is how we worked. And I think it was a very important lesson because even when you look at business, the experience I have is through cooperatives at that time when we were working with women. If women are in agriculture and they are producing potatoes and they want a market like ShopRite, ShopRite will say, we want quantity and quality. So they come together, they support one another, they work on improving their produce and multiplying. Because they are a cooperative, they can continue to supply because a ShopRite will want security of supply.
So that shows the power of partnerships. Since they
power-
came together as a cooperative,
Yeah,
they were able to supply.
they were able to supply every month because this one is producing today, this one is harvesting tomorrow, this one. So there is this constant supply. So they will have that shelf from ShopRite or Pick and Pay, whatever, that will always be full. So those are the kinds, but also partnerships are important to link up with funders that will assist you grow the business, to have a good relationship with banks that will help you to grow, but also good relationships with companies like Stanbic, companies like MTN, that can actually fund. He was talking about a foundation which
Yes.
funds a lot of projects out in the rural areas. But then you must have a clean record, keep your books, you must audit your books. You must also make sure that you are accountable. Your reports are there. Whoever is working or is supporting you, whether it's the bank, whether it's a multinational company, whether it's a government department, they want to see that you are accountable, that your books are clean, that you are working, you are keeping your records clean.
Well, just to interject again, before the records there, you were speaking about building relationships with different organizations and with people. Are there any particular formulas or ways or techniques that you used to build your networks and establish these partnerships, even from teaching to joining the ANC? I'm sure not everyone had access to Walter Sisulu or to Nelson Mandela. How were you able to network with these people, to join them, and to meet the different people that you needed to meet, who sort of acted as an accelerator to where you needed to go? What are some of these tips and tricks that could help different businesses network and create these partnerships?
Yes, going back to apartheid government, it was very difficult to meet a minister. Actually, I never met any minister except this letter that I never even thought I will get a response. And that was the paper that was talking.
Yes.
And no meeting, no communication, not even a phone call. It was not possible to talk
It
to a
was
minister.
paper.
They were like up there in heaven, far away. Now, when the new government came in, a democratic government, we remember that we were campaigning and even fighting for Nelson Mandela to get out of jail. And when he got out of jail, we were all excited. We went to the big meeting, mass rally, where he was welcomed. And he was a very kind man. He will come here and greet all of you, shake your hand, ask you, where do you come from? Who are you? Oh, I know that family. Oh, that region. I have visited that region. He had something to say. Even his security people, they had a challenge. So those were the leaders that we knew, and they were accessible to people. But what was important then was that they also shared experience and promoted the poor. So when you want to recommend this cooperative or this small company of farming women, women farmers, then it's easy to talk to Mrs. Mandela. It's easy to talk to Mrs. Zisulu. They will even go and visit the project, the village. And then they were always able to talk to some, like Danida, some of the funders, talk to the Swedish government, or those people that were willing to fund poor people in my country. And I'm sure similar situation here in Uganda. So those networks work like that. But once you have been introduced, like I said, you don't fold your hands and wait for them to come again and help you. You have to stand up. You have
Stand
to
up.
prove yourself. You have to keep your records clean. You have to do what has to be done. So that now, when you go to Stanbic and say, I need more support because I want to grow my business from a small farming project, just producing for the family and the neighbors, selling in the village. Now I want to export these potatoes. Can you support me with the necessary equipment and so on and so on? They will look at your record. Now it's your record talking to you.
Yes.
You no longer need Mrs. Sisulu or whoever there. You need to produce your record and say, I have done it. I want to grow bigger. And so those partnerships now in the commercial world, it's not like, oh, shame is poor, let's support. No, it's about, can you do it? Because there are many other people competing for
Yes.
that facility.
So the networks basically open the door,
Yes,
but when you get there, you have to deliver,
exactly.
and your product or service has to speak for itself.
Yes,
All right.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. So let us pick up from where you stopped. You were now at Parliament. Yes. As a woman leader, and now you had formed caucuses and women groups advocating for different laws. Yeah, let us continue the story.
Yes, we succeeded in passing a number of laws that we wanted as women of South Africa. But what was also important was to work not just as women, to bring in men, because when you vote in parliament, maybe we were 30% at the beginning, because we fought for a 30% representation. And then later on, because we worked so hard, we even got more than 30%. And then we went back to President Mandela and said, actually, we constitute 52% of the population of South Africa. So we really deserve 50% representation.
Yes.
And we can give our brothers the 2% because we don't hate them. We actually like them. But we just want justice because this is a question, the question of women is a question of human rights. Women's rights are human rights.
Yes.
And our leaders agreed, and we got our 50%. In the next election, women in the ANC got 50% representation. Of course, now in parliament, we have 44% women because other political parties don't have this policy of the ANC.
I see.
So they pull the women down. But as I said, we were able to fight for women, not only ourselves. As I said, we had men that were leaders, that had the political will, that were gender sensitive, but we also had to get our brothers, not just the leaders, our brothers in parliament and outside parliament, to understand that you cannot develop South Africa with one eye blind and one eye working, and the other eye is not working.
Yes.
So it is important that we develop the entire society, including women and young people, so that we're able to pull this country forward. We're able to grow this economy, all of us. Because if half is staying at home and folding their arms, and the other half is pulling alone, it will not work. So this is where we were, and we were not only talking about parliament, we were also saying companies like MTN,
Yes.
companies like Stanbic. I'm glad here you have even the vice president, who is a woman.
Yes.
In Stanbic, they have a CEO who is a woman. We are very
your
proud.
Yes.
Yes, and here you have your COO, who is a woman. We're very proud
Yes.
that women are in the forefront. And as we say, as they move on, they must pull the others of our sisters who still need support to be able to achieve and to grow. And that is not only working, because if you support a woman, you support the family, you
Yes.
support the nation, because the woman will make sure that children have food on the table every day. And even the men, when they go home sometimes, they come from the bar, they find food on the table, because women have been able to achieve a great deal in that particular country.
Awesome. There's Up until this point, I know that after you worked in parliament and served in different roles, right? You went on to become minister and also served under different portfolios. Could you just highlight that journey for us again and some of the things you did?
Yes, I served in parliament for about 10 years, 20 years actually, because when I was minister, I was still a member of parliament.
Okay.
And then out of the 20 years, 10 years I served as minister, started as deputy minister for minerals and energy. And then 2 years later, I was minister for agriculture and land affairs. And then after that, I became minister for arts and culture, just 1 year. And then the last 4 years, I was minister for women and children. So that was an opportunity again for me to bring into policy all the struggles that we have been involved in as women, be it in agriculture. We have to make sure that women have got farms. The government was buying farms for Africans in South Africa. As you know, they did not have farms at that time. So we said also, we are not going to look for men only, men only getting the farms, having a cattle farm, or what is it, beef farm, or having a big orchard of citrus,
Yes.
oranges, exporting to Europe, exporting to China. Also, the women have to be empowered. So at that time, when I was minister for women, I empowered a number of women. Some got chicken farms, some got beef farms, some got pig farms. And today, probably they are millionaires because they have done very well for themselves. So wherever you are, it is important to remember that there were partnerships, there were people that made sure that you got the vote in the first place. There were people that made sure that you get the support to be in the leadership. I was in the leadership of the women at that time.
Yes.
And there were people that thought that women must be in leadership. So even when you are in cabinet, you must remember there are women out there.
Yes.
And because you're high up there, you cannot forget those. You have to pull them along and make sure that they are empowered. So I think some of the women today, they are much better than I am
Yeah.
financially,
That is good to hear.
because they were able to benefit and to use those opportunities meaningfully. Like I said, you make sure that your bank accounts are clean.
Yes.
You make sure that you are audited. You make sure that you give reports at the required time. If the government or the bank, if they want to see the farm, the project, whatever you are doing, they must be able to go there and see you at work.
Yes.
Same thing with women in arts and culture. You find they are doing beads, they are doing jewelry, they are doing different arts and crafts. They need support. So we would support them. But many did very well. They were able to produce jewelry for ministers, for members of parliament, for big business. They were able, some of them, to export
Yes.
their products. So now, some of them have got hotels, they have got big houses, because they were empowered, but also they did their bit. What is important? You get the support, you go and get a partner, whether it's a bank, whether it's like Stanbic, whether it's a MTN, but play your part. Play your part and make sure that you are successful. So in all these sectors, it is important that we support those that are like young people. How do we empower young people so that when it's time for us to go and sit at home,
Yes.
there are people who are going to run our countries, who are going to run our economies.
Awesome. Your Excellency, up until that point, you are now a minister. In your opinion, and from your experience, what were the strongest relationships or partnerships you had built up until that point? And could you give us some tips on, let's say, how you got those partnerships and how you've been able to maintain those partnerships today? Because you didn't stop there, you actually kept rising. But what are those, what would you say is the single most, or maybe the three strongest relationships or partnerships you got? How you got them and how you maintained them? Yes.
Like I said, in South Africa, we had a strong women's movement. We still do. And we also had strong political organizations, which, like, of course, the ANC so far was the biggest, the strongest, is still the biggest, the strongest, is still the ruling party. So, but also along the way, you are able to have networks with companies, because you meet with the corporate world in the work that you do. I had strong partnerships with our companies in Ghana, because from cabinet, I was appointed High Commissioner, South African High Commissioner in Ghana.
In Ghana.
Yes. Some of those I met.
So that was after cabinet?
After cabinet.
All right.
Some of those are companies I met when I was still deputy minister many years ago of mining. And companies like Anglo Gold, Ashanti, companies like Goldfields, also Ghana is a gold mining company.
Yes.
So when I came to Ghana, we're able to work together, complementing one another. If they had some challenges, we're able to come together and find solutions to those challenges. When we also had some challenges, we work together and find solutions. The same has happened here in Uganda. Like MTN, I met some of the leaders of MTN in Ghana, and we developed strong relationships.
At that point.
Yeah, and when I came here, some of them come from South Africa to visit, some of them are part of the leadership. So for instance, when we needed to upgrade the Nelson Mandela statue,
yes,
we're able to get support from companies in Uganda, especially South African companies, particularly MTN, that assisted us to upgrade the statue of Nelson Mandela, and I'm sure very soon we'll be able to unveil that statue.
Wow.
So those are the kinds of partnerships we have. And when we have our officials from South Africa, it's good for them to come and visit some of the projects and visit some of the companies, South African companies that are here. So we create these strong networks and strong partnerships in that way.
Well, moving on to the next one, I don't know if we are getting questions from, are we getting any questions? We have a question? Well, maybe we can take that question first so Her Excellency can answer it. And as we take that question, I just want to remind the audience that we're talking about business relations for sustainable partnerships, and we have Her Excellency Lulama sharing her amazing story of the different partnerships she's created over the years and how those have accelerated her. I also know that we have a lot of people who are watching on YouTube and the rest of them on Zoom, and the audience right here in our studio. So yeah, thank you so much. Can we have that question?
Thank you very much, Opo. Actually, there are two questions.
Awesome.
My name is Sylvester Nyombi. I'm the brand and communications manager to Bonifo Systems, the lead implementing partner of this program, and corresponding from Zoom, where most of our participants are joining from. One of them is Nsuga Stewart. He says he comes from the point where you note that before people seek partnerships, it is important that they build products or create services that speak for themselves. And he notes that at times you need funding to be able to create those products. What would be ideal? What would be the suggestion on how to balance between the need for funding and the desire to create a good product? And the other question comes from Anthony Kamanzi, and he asks, what were the driving forces, or what driving forces did you rely on, Your Excellency, in doing or following your career path? What were those driving forces? So those are the two questions we have on ground at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I agree that for you to build your products, you need funding. But for instance, if I want to make dresses like this one, I must start somewhere. I must do maybe 3 or 4 dresses. And then I come to MTN and say, this is what I can do. Can I have more support so that I can produce more and produce not just for Uganda, but for South Africa, for Kenya, and so on. So I'm just saying we need to start somewhere. And then, of course, you may have people who are influential, could be your leader, or what is it called now, local councillor, or your local member of parliament. Those are the people that can support you and say, yes, we can recommend this lady because we know her in the constituency or in the village. She is a hard worker. She can produce potatoes, she can produce maize, whatever. So we would like her to be supported. But you have already started something on your own, because people will not put their money on you when you have not done anything, because they don't know if you have the potential or not. So I think for me, you must start somewhere, and then you can sell your talent, and then you can get more support, more funding. The driving forces, well, as I said before, for me, first of all, it was apartheid. It was to fight for justice and equality for the majority of our people in South Africa. But as we move on, it was not just about apartheid. We had also, as women, to look at some of the cultural practices, that keep women subjugated. And we need to address those again. For instance, child marriages, we cannot accept such practices. As Democrats and activists, what can we do to stop those? Also, we need to look at how do we ensure that there is equality in society. As I said, if a man needs a farm full of cattle, a woman also needs a farm full of cattle. what are these boundaries? How do we deal with them? Culturally, African culture, only a man can have cattle. Well, in my country, I don't know in Uganda, but in my country, cattle is a man's thing. So you have to demystify these beliefs, yes, cultural beliefs, and say we are all equal, we all have the capabilities, because in the end, the man will have a farm and cattle, a farm full of cattle, but the man goes to Johannesburg to work there. It is the woman or the wife that is looking after his cattle. And when a child is sick, she has no right to sell even a goat to take the child to hospital. She must write to the husband and ask for permission to sell the goat. By the time the letter comes, maybe the child is worse. So we have to look at these matters. Again, it's about equality, it's about justice, and ensuring that everyone is treated fairly. I would say those are my driving forces. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. A round of applause for Her Excellency. Our time is running out. I just have two questions for you as we wind up. Um, you've worked with a lot of small businesses in your journey, empowering a lot of people, particularly women who are up in business. How would you advise them to navigate the political relationship versus business without mixing the two? Because they were able to get support from you, but how were they able to keep those two separate without mixing politics and business?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, I am not a business person so far. Maybe in my next life, I'll be a business person. I think, maybe I'm wrong, that it's difficult to mix politics and business. I think people who do better are people who do business and can support politics and so on, but they are not in politics and business together at the same time. And also people who do politics and not in business, because now there are conflicts of interests that come in. Say I'm a minister of agriculture and now I want to be a farmer or I have a farm. There's a problem there, in my view. Maybe other people are able to do it. I'm a minister of mining and now I want to have a mine. There's a problem there, in my view, because there are conflicts of interest. You might now want to empower your farm instead of empowering the community, the people that put you there, you know. So for me, it's better to start, if you want to go into politics. Business is a complicated one.
Yes.
You might end up taking your budget as a minister into your business. And if you are a businessman and you want to be involved in politics, I don't know, you can actually go and support politics, but not directly involved. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yes, yes. I absolutely hear you. Um, the last question really here is what like as your parting shots, what advice would you give small businesses in Uganda and what can they learn from their counterparts in South Africa, where you supported multiple of them? What can they do differently, or how can they basically, what advice would you give small businesses in Uganda?
Yes, maybe let me start with agriculture, because I see a lot of potential in Uganda. You have very fertile soil, you have lots of water and rain, you have beautiful fruits, and you can produce all sorts of agricultural products. But I don't see big farmers, commercial farmers. So in South Africa, yes, people will start in the village, start a sustainable agriculture, like we want to feed your family and you want to sell small in the village. But
Subsistence.
subsistence.
Yes.
The idea is to ensure that you go commercial. For me, to be able to benefit, because there's potential in this country, to go commercial, produce enough to feed the region, not only East Africa, but beyond the continent. Because you know there are countries that live in, like even South Africa, we're a water scarce country. Many countries have a lot of droughts. Yeah, so I'm just saying, actually Uganda can be the breadbasket of not only Africa, but even Europe. You can supply
Yes.
as far afield, but can we move from small to big? I think as a small business, we all start small, I assume, but we must have the vision and ambition to start from small to grow big, so that then we can contribute meaningfully to the economy of our country, to creating jobs in our countries, and also make sure that our economy grows and has an impact in the growth of our continent. And I think we can start off by learning from other countries. In South Africa, we add value. You know your pineapple? I've never seen the big one like that. We don't have in South Africa. And you see, it's heavy. If you want to export it, maybe you pay a lot. But if you can process it, then you will make more money. It will not go stale, or you will not lose, because you must sell it at a low price, because you must get rid of it soon. But if you add value, then you can export to Europe, to Asia, to all over the continent. The same with other sectors. If you are in tourism, also we're saying in South Africa, let's start also in the village. How can we sell our hats, traditional African hats? People come from America, they come from Europe, they want to see actually the real African life. How do we live? What do we eat? You know, so we cook our own traditional food. We prepare our houses, even if it's a little one. You make it a chalet. You are going to receive these tourists, these guests there, and show them life in Uganda, our culture in Africa, and what we eat. We're making money at the same time.
Yes.
So this is what we go do in South Africa. You can go to Soweto now. People in Soweto, they are taking advantage. Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu have a house in Soweto. So people want to visit Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu's house.
At
People have
Vilakazi.
got Vilakazi, you know. People have got restaurants there. They are cooking our food there. All these busloads of tourists from Japan, from Europe, from America, they come and they sit in these restaurants and eat our food. Some people have got B&Bs in Soweto.
Wow.
And people will go and sleep in this B&B. Yeah, we were in Africa, we were in South Africa, we were in Soweto, even in the small village, in the north, in Limpopo, people want to go there and see how people live in that part of the world. For instance, in Cape Town, we have turned our grapes into a tourist destination, our wines. People want to see, where is this bottle of wine from South Africa, where is it coming from? They go to Stellenbosch, they go to Franschhoek, they go and do the wine tasting, and then they buy, and then they sleep there, and they have a holiday. What is that? That is tourism. So you may have started small, and then you grow and build a lodge in Limpopo. And then we invite people to go and visit Limpopo. We invite people to go and visit Mpumalanga to see where avocados come from. Here you have got coffee. Why don't you use your coffee for wine tasting? Actually, your coffee is the best kept secret of Uganda. I don't know if you are able to sell or export it, but I think you could do more. I have not seen it in South Africa, but I'm sure we don't produce coffee. That's the one thing we can start
Yes.
with and share. And also I know that Ugandans love goats. We don't love goats, but we have goats. So Ugandans can come to South Africa and buy our goats. And then we will buy your pineapple, or we can buy your coffee. This is how we start the partnerships. Now, farmers in Uganda can partner with farmers in South Africa. Farmers producing apples, oranges, and so on. They partner with your farmers producing pineapple, pawpaw, and so on. And we could be importing, exporting with one another, which is again the goal of the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. Because right now we're not trading with each other.
Yes.
We're trading with Europe and others, and we're only at 15% intra-Africa trade. But if you look at Europe, maybe they are at 60% intra-European trade, EU.
That's
And
profound.
so we should learn from that also and start trading with each other and strengthening our economies also on the African continent.
So what I've had here are 2 to 3 major things. First, you told us to think big, and then to add value, and then look at the different opportunities that we have to enhance or use what we have, let's say tourism, or what is it that we do that we can add value and market globally. And I think that was really, really profound. I have one last bonus question for you. If you were to choose another career path, what would it have been?
Yeah, because I moved from medicine, and then I went to politics, and now I'm a diplomat. I think if I was to choose now, I would go and be a farmer and produce whatever, oranges or maize, and sell.
Wow.
All over.
Wow. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. A round of applause for Her Excellency. We really appreciate your time and the amazing, very inspirational and motivational story that you've given us. And yes, I will hand back over to Nelson.
Thank you very much, Oo. I've actually taken over from Nelson. Thank you very much, Nelson. I don't know if we have any questions from within here. I would be very glad to receive them and forward them to Your Excellency. And I think while our participants do that, I could take this opportunity to say a word or two. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us here today. I had already introduced myself, and as you can see, I'm branded with Ubunifu, who has had the pleasure to implement on behalf of MTN Uganda this very wonderful product. Your Excellency, it was not by mistake that you were chosen for a business session. One of my favorite writers, Thomas Hardy, in his book, The Heart of the Matter, mentions that when he wants the opinion of a doctor, he asks a farmer. And when he wants one on farming, he asks a pastor. And when he wants one on religion, he goes to a doctor. Because in a different space, there's different dimension. And that's where you get the value of conversation and the value of mentorship and learning. So thank you very much. I request for a hand of applause for this wonderful session. On that note, Your Excellency, we are very, very grateful because you hold a diplomatic office, and the key characteristic of it is indeed based on partnership. In your way, in your daily tasks, you hold what is a beautiful relationship between our different countries. And I think somehow for someone doing business, they have a lot to pick or to harvest from those different things you do. I believe that in the session today, you mentioned the number of pointers that many have picked, starting from the very first one of moving to a white minister to talk about moving to a white university. And that just talks about building, initiating a relationship and building and harnessing it. For that, we are very, very grateful. Your last comment really caught me, which was that coffee is Uganda's best kept secret. There's been a lot on the internet today regarding Uganda's coffee, and there's a very big conversation if you manage to check it out. But that was a good reminder that indeed, whatever it is that you're doing, be it farming, be it textile, be it food that is the final product on the plate, everything that we can have, everything that we can get our hands on is sellable as a business, and it can cross the borders. So it is important for everybody who has listened, who has tuned in, to know that there is no limit to the markets out there, and you do not have to have all the business experience to do good business, as we have learned today. Your Excellency, I once again thank you on behalf of everybody, and I pray that when we call on you again for any such engagement, you'll be available. Lastly, we have been holding these sessions for over 3 or 4 months now. We started this sometime last year, and they've been entirely online. Your Excellency, I'm happy to inform you that this was a groundbreaking session, and for the very first time, we have done a physical 101 session, which speaks further to our intent to open out physically and get back to life as we once knew it. You could have seen that there were a few seats empty, and I could blame that on the fact that people have not really moved on or moved back into the physical space and physical working. So we had about 25 people on our Zoom and about 15 fluctuating to 7 and 8 below on YouTube. So I think our audience has been good, and I believe your words have not fallen on deaf ears. Moving forward, we look forward to better interactions and to keeping in touch with your office. Thank you very much. Have a good day. I think you can close this. If there is any feedback, I would be happy to receive it and forward it to the ambassador, to the High Commissioner's office through Alice Rumanzi, Miss Alice Rumanzi, and I'm sure it will be addressed in due time. Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much, MTN. It was a very interesting, of course, challenging session, but I think it strengthens our relationship, not just in business, but also people to people, because we were able to share what the people of South Africa and the people of Uganda are doing right now, because our farmers are beginning to talk to each other. Our business people are beginning to talk and to even partner with one another, but we're saying much more can be done. And as he has said, we have a very good relationship with the government of Uganda and our government, and that again is partnerships between our government to government relationships, partnerships, minister to minister relationships, even ourselves in the embassy, working closely with the various ministries in Uganda. So I think going forward, we'll be able to strengthen this relationship, not just at that level, but also in the corporate, in the business world, but also, and also a people to people relationship. Thank you very much.
I think we've come to